What's up, everybody? We are back here with Professional Picks. Another video talking about the odds and picks for each game in Week 7. Let's jump right into it with the Thursday night matchup. Before we do, don't forget to like the video if you're enjoying it. Subscribe to the channel to keep getting this NFL content along with all of our other videos. And comment some of your favorite picks from NFL Week 7. Looking at the Thursday night matchup with some familiar AFC North foes, we got the Steelers coming off a win, a nice win, albeit close against the Browns, against the Bengals, who are really having a tough time without their quarterback, Joe Burrow. Over the last few weeks, since him going down, they've gone through Jake Browning. They've got Joe Flacco now as their quarterback. But regardless, they're just not able to replicate the same magic that Joey B was able to produce. It's really hard to pick games for divisional opponents on the road, especially in primetime games. But I do think the Steelers should win this one simply because the quarterback play has been so inconsistent, and the defense is really the Achilles heel of this Bengals team. Aaron Rodgers still, threw out some textbook Rodgers throws last week, where I'm really impressed with some of the capabilities he's still able to do. Those throws are fewer and far between than earlier in his MVP days, but I think Rodgers, this offense, are enough to take advantage of the Bengals' really poor defense and poor offensive line. I think that's another key point where the Steelers team will make their mark is rushing forward, guys like Cam Hayward and TJ Watt taking advantage of a really weak and incompetent Bengals offensive line. Again, tough to win on the road against your divisional opponents under the lights in prime time, but I think that's exactly what the Steelers do here. And a pretty low-scoring game with a poor offense, honestly, on both sides, and some solid defense from the Steelers. I think it's going to be, I think the Bengals covers. I think you see Jamar Chase in the offense coming alive a little bit more. I'm thinking something like 23-19 would be a pretty apt score this game here for the Steelers winning this one. It's an intriguing game here with the Rams coming off a win, albeit unimpressive in my book, against the Ravens, facing the Jaguars here. Big thing to watch here is Puka Nacua and his health after his left ankle, I believe, left foot, with an injury scare in that game against the Ravens. Luckily, the Rams didn't need to put on the Jets as they were only facing down 3 points from that Ravens offense, but it would have been intriguing to see what Puka Nacua's full go would have been like had they needed them. I actually really like the Jaguars here, I think, in this one because of the scare of what you see here from Puka Nacua. I think Jaguars defense has been playing really well, but they came up against a tough matchup against the Seahawks, who are really good against the zone defense that the Jags run, and that's really been their key to success on the defensive side. You see the Rams, actually, their big successes against man coverage is you got guys like Nacua and Devontae Adams that thrive against man coverage and can beat one-on-ones. But when you're playing zone, this team struggles a little bit more. I think it's a good matchup here for the Jags to bounce back, especially given a hobbled Rams team that really didn't impress me offensively against one of the weaker defenses in the NFL with the Ravens. So I think you get the Jags bounce back here, get a surprising win at home in a really tight game. Could go either way. Coin flip in my mind, but I'm going to take the home team, the Jaguars, with the defense that's got a penchant to create turnovers. So I'm going to go Jaguars, let's say 24-23 in a really tight one, Jaguars. Bears coming off a game-winning field goal on Monday Night Football against the Commanders on the road, hosting the Saints, who coming off a bye week here. I'm not going to say too much. I think the Saints, it's not coming off a bye week. Chris Olave actually did a pretty decent game, but the Saints still losing last week. Not much to say about the Saints team. They really don't have too much together in a lot of the facets of the game. And the Bears are kind of doing what the Bears normally do. And they beat bad teams that they should, and they do not beat the teams that are better than them. I think that's the exact situation they find themselves here. In Week 7, you saw the Patriots kind of throw the ball downfield on the Saints all day long. I think the Bears are going to do the same. Kind of similar blueprint to what they did against the Commanders here. I think the Bears win this one. I think they cover. I like the direction they're going with. I think make a few less mistakes than they did that Monday night, and they beat the Saints handedly here. I think you go Bears 27, Saints 20. I can't even see the Saints only put up 17. I think the Bears win this one convincingly. This is an intriguing game as you get the Browns, who have had very little semblance of life on offense, taking on the Dolphins, who lost in a heartbreaker against the Chargers at home. Low scoring game here is you got the best defense in the league right now with the Browns, although they don't have much to show for it in the win department. One of the best pass rushes in the NFL, if not the best, and one of the better run defenses as well. On the flip side, you get one of the worst run defenses in the Dolphins, going up against a very poor offensive line for the Browns. So you're really not going to see a ton of offense this game, or else I'd be surprised if you did. But I think it is telling that the Browns are favored this game. I think it's because not only in part to them hosting this game, but I think that defensive edge that they have is going to prove key in this game, especially again with the Dolphins' inability to stop the run game. I think even with that poor offensive line for the Browns, you're going to see a heavy dose of Quinshon Judkins, certainly 20 plus carries this game. I think he's shown in past games he's got a really big play explosive ability, both running the ball and out of the backfield. I think they lean heavily on him. Hopefully find themselves in some short second and third downs, be able to take shots. On the flip side, you're not going to get those same opportunities from the Dolphins with their inability to run the football, or at least my prediction against this Browns defense. I like the Browns to win this game here in a really ugly, low-scoring game. I'm going to go Browns 19, Dolphins 17. Chiefs here coming off a convincing Sunday Night Football win against the Lions, hosting the Raiders, who, yeah, they beat the Titans, but that's exactly what they were supposed to do. This Raiders team still surrendering double-digit point spread to the Chiefs, as they've done most of Patrick Mahomes' tenure there. There's just really not much going for this Raiders team, especially with how poor their defense is. Again, you don't really take this game against the Titans at face value, given how poor the Titans have played all season long. Chiefs certainly seem to be getting it going offensively, Kelsey's making plays, kind of picking up the slow start that he had this season. Worthy's now healthy, and they're getting him more involved in the offense. Thornton's been a great addition and surprise to the offense, really stretching the field. I like the direction that they're going. They don't have a great run game, but they don't necessarily have to, because Patrick Mahomes is, one, picking up the slack with his legs himself, but also so adept at making things happen with his arm that these guys are really starting to hit their stride. Finally back to 500 here, looking to go above 500, I think, for the first time this season. And I think they have a really ripe opportunity to do so against a Raiders team that is really inefficient on defense, has a knack to turn the ball over offensively, which is never good if you're trying to win against the Chiefs, who commit very little mistakes. Ultimately, I think the Chiefs roll here in an outsized game with the offense keeps rolling, 30 points for the Chiefs and a measly 17 for the Raiders here against a really solid Chiefs defense too. Eagles, after a really tough Thursday Night Football loss against the Giants, and devastating one at that, or a lot, really non-competitive game there in the fourth quarter against the Vikings, coming off a bye. Eagles, even on the road, still favored this game, and I think that's fair given some of the struggles I've seen of J.J. McCarthy this year, going against a pretty solid Eagles defense here with really competent defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. I think, the Eagles didn't have the greatest opportunity stopping the run game. Was, some of the 3 touchdown performance with Cam Scatterbo is going to look poor on paper, but if you actually, look at the box score and look at the yards per carry, actually held Scatterbo to a pretty low rushing total and yards per carry. They can do that against the Vikings here too and force McCarthy to make plays. It's going to take a Jackson Dart-esque performance to beat the Eagles back-to-back times. I think the Eagles, off the loss and off the long week, bounce back against the Vikings, really lean heavily on the run game. Here is, they probably try to every week, against the Vikings team that is solid overall defensively, but if there's one weak spot, it's the run game, which ranks bottom 10 in the league. Again, using Saquon Barkley, getting him more integrated in this offense, leaning less heavily on Jalen Hurts' arm, relying on the Eagles' defense here, making life tough for an inexperienced quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. I like the Eagles to bounce back and win this game 23-20 here for the final. This game was really intriguing when I saw the line here. Panthers coming off a big win against the Cowboys. Jets coming off a really horrendous-looking loss to the Broncos over there across the pond. really hard for, I think, a lot of people to understand why the Panthers are only favored by 1.5. Certainly being on the road is attributable to that. But really leaving me scratch my head here with the Jets, basically in a coin flip game here. And whenever I look at a line and don't understand it, I immediately shy away from the pick that seems more intuitive to me, which I think if everyone listening is like me, you would expect the Panthers to win this game handily. I'm going to go against my gut here and say that the Jets actually win this game counterintuitively. You can make up a game script to kind of justify any pick you make here when you're looking at a spread. And I think the formula for the Jets, keep playing mistake-free football. They didn't commit any turnovers against the Broncos and a really good defense there, although they look pretty horrendous. But take advantage of a really weak Panthers pass rush. Give Justin Fields a lot of time to either find open receivers, or really in his case open tight ends, as he doesn't throw the ball to receivers that often. Get a heavy dose of Breece Hall against this Panthers defense that's really porous, and make opportunities when you can. Take advantage of the poor defense from the Panthers. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You'd be surprised on the surface if the Jets win this game, but something's telling me they're going to. This is a winless team at home against a really poor defense with the Panthers coming off a big emotional win. I think this is prime opportunity for a Jets upset, and that's exactly what I'm going to take here. In an ugly game, Jets 20, Panthers 19. As I mentioned the Patriots earlier, them and Drake May really seem to find the offensive flow on offense, especially in the passing game. Drake May really spreading the ball out to guys like Diggs has been a real beneficiary. Booty, however you pronounce his last name, has been really big in the offense too. We're really spreading the ball. Hunter Henry, a lot of these guys is starting to click with now second-year quarterback Drake May. Titans, on the other hand, in Cam Ward, really having a tough time offensively getting things together. I think that at the minimum is pretty indicative of how this game's going. But the Titans still surrounding some of the most points per game for any defensive unit in football, coupled with a really inefficient offense. It's just hard to justify the Titans competing in any games, covering the spread in any games. I don't think very highly of the Raiders, and they didn't make that game all that competitive. I think it's going to be much of the same here as the Patriots. Again, seem to be hitting their stride. I like the Patriots to win this game 27-14 in a blowout, in a rout where you see the Patriots continue to show off their stuff and show why I think they're going to make the playoffs this season and be a real threat there. And now in an AFC East that's a little bit more wide open as the Bills have dropped back-to-back games here. So the Patriots certainly have life in their playoff hopes. After, again, Giants win on Thursday night in an upset against the Eagles, they face themselves on the road as the Broncos come back from England and are favored by a touchdown at home. I'm choosing not to believe and buy in too much to that Giants win. I think you saw Jackson Yard had a great first half. They got some opportunistic plays. Cam Scatterbo hammered home a bunch of touchdowns within the 5-yard line, but really didn't have a great effective outing running the football. They're facing an even tougher defense here with the Broncos. This is a Broncos offensive line that's really well equipped to neutralize the one real strength that this Giants team has, and that's their pass rush. I think that, again, that gets mitigated by the best pass blocking unit in football for the Broncos. I don't think much of this Giants offense, although you saw flashes, 31 points is certainly nice on Thursday Night Football, but I think of that more of a fluke, an exception rather than the rule. I do think they can keep this close, and I'm not a big believer in this Broncos offense, as you can see by the minimal output offensively against the Jets here. But I do think the Broncos win this game in a real low-scoring affair. I think you're going to see something to the tune of Broncos, let's say 19, Giants 13. Again, a low-scoring one where the Broncos win and show that the Giants' offensive output on Thursday Night Football was more of a fluke. Another game here where I was a little bit surprised on the spread. You get the Colts, who've been looking really well this year. They are actually going on the road, and they're going to be underdogs against the Chargers here, who, it's a close game in a coin flip game. But again, the one-loss Colts being the dogs, even on the road against the Chargers team, is a little bit surprising. Again, one of those things where if you didn't know the spread, you'd probably be all over the Colts this game after the Chargers barely beat the Dolphins, who have one win at this point. But I think you're getting a Chargers team that's going to get some key players back in their offensive line. That's been a struggle for them. Quentin Johnston at wide receiver will be back this game too, giving them a boost. And this is a team that is 4-2. They're a playoff caliber team in their own right. And I think this is, to me, more of a prove-it game for the Colts. Are they really contenders or pretenders here? Are they going to be a 6-1 team, putting them, still atop of the NFL standings in terms of best record in the league? Or are they going to crumble on the road against a playoff caliber team that is, again, in a coin flip game here? I'm going to choose to go with the battle-proven team with the Chargers, with probably the better quarterback in Justin Herbert. I think they're going to do their best to rely on the run game. I think the formula here is really for the Chargers slowing down the Jonathan Taylor show here for the Colts. Chargers have the 4th best run defense in football in this season so far. So they are equipped with their defense. Also 4th best pass coverage unit in football too. So really solid defense here for the Chargers. That's going to be what they're going to need to lean on in order to beat this Colts team, who have the 20th best ranked defense. You're going to need to see a lot of Justin Herbert, but he's used to some nice big fourth quarter comebacks and winning the game with his arm. I don't think you can say the same thing about Daniel Jones, who's been really managing the game as opposed to winning it this season thus far for the Colts. Colts' one loss this season came against another playoff caliber team from Los Angeles in the Rams. I would expect actually the Colts to lose this game against another playoff caliber team, dropped to 5-2 in a coin flip game. But I like the arm of Justin Herbert to carry the Chargers to the win in this one, and probably a pretty high scoring affair with the Chargers scoring 30 points out of necessity to beat the Colts 27 points that they are able to put up here. So I talked about the good defense of the Chargers. I still think you see this Colts offense roll, but I think you're going to see the arm of Justin Herbert win this game for the Chargers here. You got the Cardinals, who played pretty well against the Colts with Jacoby Brissett. Likely will get Kyler Murray back this week, but still laying 6.5 points to the Packers, who have one of the best defensive units outside of the Browns here in the NFL. I think this game's going to be closer than people think. I'm not convinced about this Packers team yet, especially offensively. They didn't put up as big of a beatdown against the Bengals I think most people would have expected. But you get a really banged up Cardinals team here who they're really thin on running back. They now are facing concussions with their star wide receiver, or budding star wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. That offense is extremely depleted against the second best coverage unit in football, the 3rd best overall defense in football. Going to be really hard for the Cardinals to muster up points stacking up against the great defense thus far from the Packers with their dilapidated offense here due to injury. And I think that's really going to be all she wrote in this game, with the Cardinals boasting a bottom 10 defensive unit too. You're going to see a lot of Josh Jacobs this game. It's been the one thing that this Packers team has really leaned on. Cardinals have the 30th overall run defense, so that's bottom 3 for those keeping score at home. It seems really stacked up against the Cardinals to win this game, and so you got to like the Packers to win it. I like the fight the Cardinals have been having. Then maybe we'll keep this game closer than people think, but ultimately I think the huge edge that the Packers have on defense, and then the also edge they have in the running game against a weak run defense for the Cardinals would be the difference maker here. I like the Giants to win this one 24-20. Sorry, the Giants. The Packers to win this one 24-20 against the Cardinals on the road. Two really poor defenses in the NFC East here facing off with the Cowboys. Again, dropping the game against the Panthers, and the Commanders dropping the game against the Bears. See, this total at 53.5 is just one of the higher totals you'll see all season, with two really poor coverage units in the NFL. I think I would have to imagine these guys are both bottom 5 units in coverage, and the Commanders are second worst. Cowboys are 4th worst. So this is one of the few matchups the Cowboys get where they actually have the better coverage unit in football here. I think honestly, after a few losses for the Cowboys, are due for a win here. You've seen a little bit more consistent offensive production from them and Dak Prescott. Even with CeeDee Lamb's absence, you're able to see this offense clicking a little bit, and I think Javonte Williams at running back has really been helping them. You're not getting, you're getting some spurts from Crosby Merritt here for the running back from Commanders, but not like consistent solid runs like you do from Javonte Williams and running back for the Cowboys. I think the inconsistent run game with, again, a weak defense is the key here. One too many weaknesses for the Commanders. I think you get the Cowboys to win this one in a shootout where you're going to see a ton of points scored. I think you're going to need to see close to a 40-burger for the Cowboys. I think they're going to put up 37 points to the Commanders' 33 and win this one in a shootout at home. With Dak Prescott throwing for 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, you're going to need to see a vintage moment for him. I think you're going to get it here as the Cowboys get more and more desperate as the season goes on. Big win for the Falcons Monday night against the Bills, and a really tough week for the 49ers, losing their middle linebacker, Fred Ward, of the season. One of the best, if not the best, middle linebacker in football here. This is the opening line for the game. I wouldn't be shocked if this thing starts to move as the public starts to really respect the solid pass game that Michael Penix Jr. is really able to put up here for the Falcons over the last week, even 2 games that the Falcons have played, and then starting to be insurmountable the amount of injuries that the 49ers are having and sustaining here. It seems to happen almost every year. It seems like with this team, they continue to get the injury bug, and this year's no different. It's not much to say, but the Falcons are going to beat you with a mix of Drake London and Bijan Robinson, who's been seemingly unstoppable this season. And the 49ers are going to try to beat you with Christian McCaffrey, and hopefully they get George Kittle back this game. But even if not, Tunga's at tight end has been really serviceable for them. Outside of that, they're just getting decimated on injuries. Brock Purdy may and is hopeful to be back this game. I think a lot of people are going to be looking to the Falcons to repeat this, but they've been one of the most inconsistent teams in football over the last few years. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Shanahan pull out a bag of tricks to win this game. If the Niners can get Kittle and Brock Purdy back this game, I think they're going to win this one, surprisingly enough, off the back of just savvy coaching and solid quarterback playing and turnover-free football. That's my prediction for this game. So I'm taking the 49ers to win this one, say 23-20 here, and a pretty sloggy, run-heavy game. But keep it out of the injuries for the 49ers to see who's most importantly going to be starting at quarterback and getting one of their best players on both sides of the football back with George Kittle potentially. Lions coming off a tough loss and really poor offensive output against the Chiefs on Sunday night, with the Commanders who've been looking great here at the start of this season with Baker Mayfield is slinging the ball to everybody. Big injury to keep an eye out here is rookie wide receiver Emeka Egbuka, a Ohio State product for the Buccaneers that has been just a star so far. He may or may not be ready to go this game, so that's really going to swing the line given his presence and given the injuries to guys like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin already at wide receiver. Even if Egbuka plays, I love the Lions this week in a bounce-back game at home. If you recall last year, the Lions only lost 2 games. One of them was real early on to the Buccaneers. I guarantee you Dan Campbell and company have not forgotten about that loss, and they're going to be coming back to win this game and get some revenge. I think the Lions lay down the hurt offensively, put up 40 against this Buccaneers defense that is actually pretty solid, but just by virtue of how many times they've been in the field, they are a little bit susceptible to big chunk plays and letting up explosive plays in the passing game. That's the Lions' MO. I think that's what you're going to see here. And offensively for the Buccaneers, they just keep getting riddled with injuries on their offensive line, and that's not going to be, that's not good against any team, but against a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, who's one of the highest pass rush win rates in the league, going to be really hard to slow that guy down with backups on the offensive line. I love, the Lions here, especially with all the offensive injuries sustained by the Bucs. I think they blow out the Buccaneers here to the tune of 40-23. I just think the Lions make a statement game where they show they still are one of the top teams here in the NFC. Monday Night Football here with the Seahawks after a nice win on the road against the Jaguars, hosting the Texans coming off a bye. I think this is going to be a really tight game against 2 really, really solid defenses here to make the argument that the Texans boast the best defense in the league, and they certainly have one of the best pass rush tandems with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. Some great guys at cornerback playing shutdown football, which they're going to need to do against Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's been one of the hardest receivers to slow down in the NFL this year. But I think that this Texans defense is up for the task. It's really all eyes are going to be on C.J. Stroud and what this offense can do coming out of the bye, having some really sluggish performances against every team that isn't, the bottom 5 defensive units in football, which were the Ravens and the Titans in the case for the Texans opponents. It's not going to be nearly as smooth sailing against the Seahawks defense, who, even without their top 2 cornerbacks last week, still held the Jaguars to a pretty low offensive performance and only 12 total points. So again, cannot iterate it enough that these defenses on both sides are playing at extremely high levels right now, regardless of who actually is on the field, but it helps when their starters are out there. I think this is going to be a really, really tight game. Wouldn't be shocked if you saw a Texans sneak this one out, but I'm not bold enough to pick it with the way I've seen their offense play this week and their really poor offensive line. I'm going to take the Seahawks to win this one in a nail-biter, 17-16. Again, real low-scoring game with the Seahawks just barely edging out the Texans on Monday Night Football. That's all we got for you guys this week. Try to go pretty quick, at least as quick as I can. Get a little verbose at times, but hope you guys enjoy the content and the analysis, and see you guys again in Week 8.